I may start saying something.
Be conscious of what you're say. Yes. You. All right, cool. Well, we'll go ahead and start. I've had a bit of a cough this week. I've had some cough the last few weeks. Hopefully I can get through talking the next little bit. So welcome to our new board members. And we also have Daniel here who's been on one of our subcommittees. So I invited our committee members to come anytime that they want to. And so I think probably let's just start out doing introductions. I'll start. I'm Jamie Carpenter. I'm the downtown manager here with the city. I've been here for about 5 years, or a little over 5 years now. I started in 2020. And before that, I did the similar work in Tryon for about 4 years. So downtown stuff for a while now. And just glad to have all of our new folks around.
I'm Lindsay Simpson. I'm on city council. I'm the city council liaison for this board. So I work with the board and listen to concerns and things like that. And I can work with city council, sort of like a go-between, to give them an idea of what we're working on, get their appetite for things that you guys are talking about, before we get too far down the road.
Hi, I'm Ryan Salveson. I joined the board 1 year ago as a property owner in the downtown area. But we're talking about earlier, I had a kid and the hurricane, so I really just started getting involved really a couple of months ago. And I live and work in Henderson.
I'm Jenny Breedlove, and I'm the owner of the Emporium on Main, and soon the market will open where the old Christian Science Center was. It will be a market tea room type thing. August 1st.
I'm Herman Holt. I work in Asheville, but I live in Hendersonville. I've been living in Hendersonville for the last 12 years or so. And I'm an at-large member of this board.
Can you, especially also, can you say a little bit about why you were interested in applying for it? It's like interesting for me.
Sure. Having been in the general Asheville, Hendersonville area for the last 20 plus years, I felt like I haven't had an opportunity or didn't take an opportunity to get involved with the local community. And now I feel like I have better opportunity and time to do that, I think. And so I start with something and saw an opportunity come up. I forget timing.
Yeah.
But then happy to hear the opportunity be considered.
Nice. Thank you.
I'm Daniel Carey. I am on the Economic Vitality Subcommittee. So I'm the lowest ranked member here. And I've lived in Hendersonville 5 years, and I work at Pisgah Legal Services, which is a nonprofit legal aid organization. I talked to Jamie earlier, and I just like learning about kind of all aspects of what we do downtown here, since I live within walking distance and I work right out there for now. The city's kindly letting me borrow some space while we look for additional space because we're still kind of growing. So
I'm Cheryl Solomon. I probably live the closest of anybody, which means I'm the latest, of course, but I thought y'all were, I just assumed, it's not smart. I thought y'all were in the City Hall building.
And that's where our offices are, so it's easy.
Okay, so it's kind of, my mom grew up here in Hendersonville, and my grandparents owned a furniture store that was next to where Hannah, whatever it is. years and years and years. So came up here all the time as a kid and we just have moved here as our final move, never moving again. Bless you. And so I have really fond memories of downtown and remember when it used to be straight and not wavy and all that stuff. And we're living in the Skyline Hotel, which is a whole nother experience in itself. But have already learned some real interesting things about downtown just from doing some painful renovation work there, but love history and love to see how the city's changing. And I just retired, so I need something to do.
We like retired people. We put our retired people to work a lot, so you might be ready. And Stephanie, that,
Yes, I'm Stephanie Sweeney. I'm the summer intern and I'm working with JB's team. This is part of my master's program with Western Carolina that I do an internship if I don't already have work experience in some aspect of what I'd like to go into. So here I am, and I'm here, whatever you guys need, whatever you need help with.
and Dakota's getting, oh, he's calling me.
Uh-oh.
Hey,
So,
wait, did you want a protein on your Caesar?
That's,
that's-
A chicken.
there's two main lines.
That's Dakota. He is- He's our event coordinator. He's been at the city for about 3 years now and, he, does the farmer's market, his main job with events. And we also have Terry Jacobs, who's sick today, and she's also our event coordinator, and she, so we've got Terry and Dakota who do events, and they come to most of our meetings and everything too. But their main job is events, and we'll kind of get into all of the events and everything that we do soon, because there's a lot. So feel free to kind of jump in and ask any questions. This is kind of a little bit of an agenda of what we'll go through, and most of it's in those notebooks. Some may or may not be in the same order of what we go in today. It kind of gets moved around a little bit. So first, just kind of this bigger context thing. So we're a Main Street program. Yeah, I don't have the slides printed. But so we're a nationally accredited Main Street program, which means we're a part of this bigger, like, group of national programs. And so it's kind of cool to understand kind of why we have these downtown committees and why we do the approach in the way that we do. And as part of that, it's also, so there's a national Main Street program, then the state program, which is run through the North Carolina Department of Commerce. So they've got this video. So that's a little bit about the part of that bigger context that we're a part of. And so then also like, if you hear us talk about Main Street, as in like Main Street program and everything, that's all, our Main Street is downtown. So it's Main Street and Seventh Avenue. It just sometimes it falls under that national title of Main Street, but it's really downtown. A little bit of background on that and the history of it. So back in 1977, when the interstates were starting to take away traffic from downtowns, just nationwide, and like strip malls and malls were getting developed, the National Trust for Historic Preservation were really trying to figure out how to preserve these buildings on main streets. And instead of just saving the buildings, they wanted to make sure, you know, if a building's empty, it's gonna fall apart. You know, buildings want to be lived in. And so they did this pilot project in a few states and developed this comprehensive approach back in I believe this was in the 80s was when they started the approach. And so then back then, what they learned that, you know, the important things were strong public-private partnership, an important organization, program manager and dedicated staff, good design quality programs, and having that incremental process. So this is actually a little bit older of a picture, so there's probably more. But a lot of times if you go anywhere that has a good downtown, especially the smaller towns, in North Carolina, they can only be up to 50,000 in population, but other states, there's even some corridors of bigger cities that are considered Main Street. Like there's sections of like Philadelphia and Atlanta that have their own areas that aren't like big Atlanta proper, but like those districts that are their own Main Street communities, which probably have as much of a population as like the city of Hendersonville in some of those streets. And in North Carolina, there's 70, and there might be even more now a few years later. They're all they go through a process through the Department of Commerce in order to become a Main Street program. And we also have to do reporting every year in order to stay a Main Street program. And so it's not once you're in forever. I grew up in Lincolnton, North Carolina. And when I was in college, I did an internship for the Main Street program in downtown, and it's no longer on the list. So it's not on it anymore because they didn't continue to meet the standards, which is a lot of what we're going through today is what those best practices are to make sure that the downtown's good. And so Hendersonville was the 15th. So 1986 was when Hendersonville became an official Main Street program. And a little bit of context and history then is back then and up until I think about 2009 or 10, it was all its own nonprofit organization and was not a city-run organization to operate. And there were a lot of issues with just management of a nonprofit entity rather than having the more city resources that can go towards it. It had funding from the city anyway, all that to say is different towns have different ways of doing it. Some are just straight nonprofit organizations, some are city organizations, and some are a mixture of both. But we were really doing this type of work before this, 1986. And I'll go into that here.
And what are those color shading things?
Oh, those are the regions. And so every, I think it's 2 or 3 times a year with the state Main Street, they have regional meetings. And so we'll get together with other people that are Main Street directors, typically in that, like we're in that green western region. And so it's like us and Tryon and there's Forest City and Rutherford and Rutherford County, and then going all the way out west to Murphy and Hayesville. And Waynesville. I think I got all of them there. Yeah, so they're all, that's just, it goes back to how they used to have regional economic development groups. And those went away, I think around 2012 or so. It was called Advantage West. I'm not sure what, I think that went away from being nonprofits to being state run. And so going back to the 4 main areas that that they found were really important for like a whole comprehensive program. And it's not just fixing up buildings, but it's making sure that the businesses in the buildings have customers and they have good businesses. And then that the outside and the city-owned spaces are doing well too. So that's kind of how we run our committees as well as under really 3 of the 4 areas. So there's economic vitality. And so our economic vitality committee, with that building diverse economic base and catalyzing investment, essentially how I kind of say it is that committee focuses on business and properties. So things that keep businesses operating and things that keep properties from, or incentives to make the properties ready for businesses to go in and make them accessible for businesses to go in. Design, we call that committee community character, but it's really our design committee. And so they work on public space. So anything that you can just enjoy outdoor in the public space is what that committee works on. 7th Avenue streetscape, for example, and then public arts and things they're working on too. Promotion, it's called our events committee. And right now that committee is really just kind of on the execution of the events that we do. But at some point, I have been wanting to at some point have that more be like a marketing type of committee as well. And then organization, that's just overall the board, engaging with volunteers and partnerships, and we've got a lot of partners. These were kind of the main, the guiding principles that we kind of follow as far as with Main Street. Comprehensive approach. We're not just focusing on one single project, incremental. It's small projects every time, which in Hendersonville, we still do the small projects, but we've been doing it for so long here. There's a lot of the bigger projects, because like if you, at some point, anyone would be welcome to come to the Main Street conference that we have, and you'll meet towns that are way earlier in the process. Like you'll talk to people and they'll be like, oh, wow, Hendersonville, we're jealous of what all we've got going on here, which is, it's kind of nice to hear. It makes you feel good about it. But they're focusing on like getting a garden club to maintain a planter outside when we're working on like $3 million streetscape project kind of thing. So we're still incremental, but we're kind of on that bigger increments on that. Community driven, really important of having that all buy-in and community partnership. Some towns don't have a good relationship between their nonprofit downtown organization and their city. And so there's like conflict between doing things in their downtown, which that's not the case here at all. It's just been kind of ingrained in Hendersonville, the downtown, for so long. We're really fortunate in this line of work. Public-private partnerships, because we work with businesses, working with that private sector is really critical for a healthy downtown. Identifying and capitalizing on existing assets. So that's like, we don't want to tear buildings down. We want to preserve the buildings. And it's more sustainable. And if a building comes down and one gets rebuilt, it's not going to have the character that these old buildings have. Like there's just, you don't ever see a new building ever that looks like old one. Quality, that kind of goes without saying. We want to make sure what we're doing is done well. Change and attitude, accepting of change. I always try to say, like when people are upset about things changing with a growing city, is it's not what it was 20 years ago, and 20 years ago it wasn't what it was 20 years before that. Like there's going to be change, and you want to be smart about it, but not denying that's going to happen. And implementation oriented. So we follow a work plan that we develop every year or every couple of years. The benefits for the North Carolina Main Street program is that those quarterly meetings that we connect with regional partners, as well as an annual conference that's every year in March. Lindsay went with us this past March, and we usually we'll pay for hotel and, registration for people who want to come, from board members and committee members. Next year it's gonna be in New Bern, so it's a little far of a drive. This past year it was in Mooresville, yeah, so it wasn't too far. They try to alternate it between west and east, but they consider Mooresville west, which,
Okay.
not quite, not quite what I would consider west. But they're going so many spaces that can hold it, because it's become like an 800-person conference, and they want to have it in downtown areas, and there's not a lot of downtown areas that have meeting spaces that can accommodate that many people. There's also access to funding quite often that's only for Main Street communities to apply. A lot of that depends on what the governor and General Assembly budget has in it. And there's also awards. So we can recognize a champion who's just like recognizing a volunteer or community member that's kind of gone above and beyond to support the downtown program. And then there's other like competitive awards. The Gray Mill, for example, was one that won an award for building rehabilitation. So a part of the reporting that we have to do, and they've revised this a few years ago. So every year, I have to submit a report that makes sure that we're following the standards that they have outlined. And in that notebook, in one of the pockets on the front, it's got like our report card with it. You can look at it. It looks like this. So that just kind of shows how we're the things that I have to report on for it. Okay. I'm not going to go through all of them completely, but you kind of see some of that there. But really, they just want to make sure that everyone's really taking that broad-based approach for it. And you can see in there's all kinds of different individual standards under each one. So there's accountability to make sure that we're following what we need. And then there's a benefit to that. Sometimes the reporting, I'm doing all of it. I'm like, what is the benefit to it? But it is that there's funding ability and then the network of all the people. Like I can call somebody at the state Main Street or Department of Commerce and get help on a problem and call fellow like other Main Street directors. And a lot of this is also based off of keeping track of performance, like vacancies and volunteers and things like that. A few things that we have to have in order to meet the accreditation is that we have a board that's representative of the district, as well as community members, and that they meet regularly with the program, to work on things with the program. Any town over 5,000 people has to have at least one paid full-time director. If they're smaller towns, they can have part-time. We have to have our work plan with our strategies to do that, and I'll show you all that here shortly. We have to have a dedicated budget. We have to have support from the municipality. We have to report annual statistics. And so that's something that I won't have our current year statistics yet to share with the board because they're due at the end of July every year. And so that's when we do those statistic reporting, it includes things like private investment, which I go through and check building permits in the districts to see how much money is going in by private properties and public investment. And it also tracks facade grants that we do and volunteer hours and vacancies downtown. And being a member in good standing in Main Street America, that just means we have to pay like $400 a year to members. So this is about the assessment for that. This is some of the reporting, and I don't have for 24, 25 because I haven't completed that reporting yet. But since 2012, it's kind of cool to see the whole range of things. And I just don't have records from these earlier reports for a few things. But we've done 21 facade grants. That's coming from the city or our nonprofit, which I'll go into. And that's just to support updating the exterior of buildings. There's been 13 building rehabs since 2018 downtown. There's been 2 new construction. Overall, a net gain of 82 jobs. And I will preface that the jobs, when I report those, are kind of guesstimates sometimes, because we don't have a good way of knowing all of that. We've had a net increase of 37 businesses since 2012, and that's probably even a higher amount as well. $14 million in public investment. Some of the big ones, 2 years ago, that $8 million is parking garage. And then this year we'll have the 7th Avenue investment in that. In 2012, that $2 million, that would have been, they updated Main Street in a multi-year phase. It was already curved then, but they redid a lot of it. And then private investment is even bigger, $36 million. So that includes building renovations, it includes private property bought, real estate sold is also included in that private investment. So now, first, any questions? And did they say as far as food?
Yeah, it's like 30 minutes. They're gonna take too much from you.
Okay, cool. So because y'all are appointed by city council, you're a public board. And so there are like statutes and rules related to serving as a public board. All of our meetings are public. The public can attend, we have public comment. The public can have access to the minutes, and we put the recordings of our meetings online. We don't have to, but I just do that because it's easier. I ran out of room to store them on Zoom. And so a little bit of history. So before 2021, there was a Main Street Advisory Committee and a 7th Avenue Advisory Committee. And there was some cross-pollination for some of the subcommittees. But what we were finding was that both committees were talking about the same things. And so we were just repeating the same conversations over and over again. But then if one person wasn't attending one or the other, you hear different parts of the conversation. So in 2021, we merged the boards together to be a Downtown Advisory Board. So it includes 5 stakeholders representing 7th Avenue. Stakeholders must be a business or property owner within the district. 5 for Main Street, 5 at-large members, and 1 city council liaison. So we didn't have any new 7th Avenue stakeholders because they just how their timing was on the board. No one had decided to roll off. These are current members, except for I didn't get y'all added in on it. But I do have the board roster that's in the notebook, so you've got everybody's information. A few highlights from the rules of procedure. And this is for the board, not necessarily for the subcommittees. So if you miss 3 consecutive meetings or over half of them, you may be removed from the board. And I will just say, just as far as how, we go through a lot in our meetings. And so then when people miss some, to have to rehash things that has kind of spent a couple hours going through can be frustrating for the ones who come regularly. So it kind of just helps progress things on. And I already mentioned about the open meeting laws. Our Downtown Advisory Board meets here on the 2nd Tuesday at 4 every month, unless it's canceled, or we have the ability to do a special call meeting. And typically a special call meeting has to be meeting for a very specific purpose. Like we have to outline that in the noticing. So if we've got something that comes up that we really need to meet about, it would be like, we have a special call meeting about parking because they can't wait till the next board meeting or something like that. So this is essentially that anytime there's 2 or more members together meeting about, I don't really remember how it says. meeting about an issue that should be a publicly discussed issue with the board. And that's technically a meeting, so that's just something to be cautious of. For the downtown board, it's a little less of a concern because we're not like a planning board or historic preservation commission where they're making very legally binding things. This board, any recommendation or anything, any decisions made are essentially recommendations that then go before council. There's not like public hearings for like variances or anything like that. But it's just advisory. So we have our, this is kind of how the flow of things work, and we've been working on this last couple of years of really making our committees functional. To then have the committee members report to the board, because a lot of times it was just me talking for like an hour and a half. At that point, like, okay, I could have seen it more. And so the subcommittees, so events, economic vitality and community character, they all meet, like we have our community character meeting this morning, and they kind of get into the weeds a little bit more. And then we'll make recommendations to the downtown board. Sometimes there's some items that are either the timing doesn't work to go to a committee first, or it just comes up in a downtown board meeting where it doesn't go to the committees, but they might suggest that it gets kicked down to a committee for kind of digging in a little bit more. And then any significant things would then go to city council, any type of policy or ordinance. Just an example is we talk a lot about special events and the process of closing the street down for special events. And so that it actually came up in the downtown advisory board back in the fall and had a conversation for that. And then that got kicked down to the Economic Vitality Committee to have some discussion about. And so it's now, after multiple discussions on processes, it's going to go to city council to get their direction if we should proceed with changing policies or ordinances, or it just basically gives staff kind of direction on that.
Amy, does, when say facade grants are that's recommended by committee, do they go to city council for approval?
No, and they'll, and I'll get into on the budget side, because that's where it's a little, it can be confusing, because we also have our nonprofit, which is the Friends of Downtown, which basically is funds that's made from the events that we do. So the nonprofit has, basically, it gives us a little bit more discretionary funds. And so when a facade grant, because that's all funded by the nonprofit, it's designated that the committee reviews and approves it. And so then that committee is what that final approval is for it, since it's not city funds. All city meetings can be found on the city calendar. So this has all of the on the city's website. It's got the event calendar here, which has all of the meetings, and then all of the agendas can be down here, and you can just go to meeting groups. And it has our subcommittees and committees. So in our rules of procedure, we have the meeting format laid out in it. It can be moved around if it's needed to in meetings. For the board meetings, we always have a public comment, and then we have the committees report. Typically by the end of it, sometimes I'm not sure we'll have enough for an hour, and then they pretty easily fill it up. Typically, we very rarely have meetings that go up to 2 hours. There's been a few occasions for it, but try to keep it to about an hour and a half. The team meetings, the subcommittees, they just look at the minutes and then get into working on items with the work plan. People in the public can attend any of them, and with the committee meetings, it's usually just kind of open dialogue a lot of times. So overall, for first, any questions on any of that? Do you have anything about public bodies that we need to?
I mean, I think just be cognizant of the fact that like if three of you are together out somewhere and you start to talk about something that we've talked about in a downtown advisory board meeting, that's technically an open meeting that's not been advertised, which is against the law. The other thing too is like if we send out emails, don't reply all. It's the same it's the same as if you're talking in person. So like if you're wanna email the group something, send it to one of them so that they can send it out. Or like I've sent the same message to every person separately, because otherwise now that's also an open meeting, because all of your communications about downtown business are public record.
That's sometimes harder.
Welcome to the fishbowl.
Yeah.
Some people will make a separate email address for the board that they're on. Like I was liaisoning for ESB and some of those people made a separate email address. So then that way, I mean, not that we get a lot of public records requests, I think, for downtown business, but if we ever did get something, it's really easy for you to go in and just go through that one email instead of having to go through all of your personal emails.
And we've got it set up with our email group that you can't reply back to it because it's sent out to groups.
Yeah.
I didn't even realize it until someone had they tried to reply. So general kind of overview of our program and specifically for downtown. So last year we updated our mission and vision statements. Just talked about this morning, Daniel. And this is where, and I'll go into more on the Friends, but that is the nonprofit. So we kind of, they're kind of sisters. So the Friends of Downtown Hendersonville and the Downtown Advisory Board collaborate to preserve and enhance the vitality of downtown Hendersonville's districts by initiating policies, investing in capital improvements, and placemaking to create a quality experience. That's what the board does. We discuss policies and recommend policies, invest in the downtown physically, and just create a vibrant downtown. The vision statement, so what we want Hendersonville downtown to be. Downtown Hendersonville is the epicenter of activity and the most meaningful destination for locals and visitors. It preserves our historic charm at the heart of cultural and community activities while featuring safe, accessible streets and trails that support thriving, authentic local business. So kind of looking at the lens of anything that we're working on, does it get us to that vision? And if not, then should we be focusing on it? The districts themselves, so I mentioned there's Main Street and 7th Avenue. So this is just a map of those areas. So Main Street goes from 6th Avenue to Allen Street, and in between Church and King. And then 7th is a little harder to say streets wise because there's like a lot of streets in and around there with how it's laid out, because it's really trying to get the commercial areas. And the reason for that is because those districts are municipal service districts, which mean that they pay any property within those districts pay an additional property tax. So you've got like your city tax, county tax, and then there's a municipal service district tax. And so we don't want to add residential into that unless they're like Skyland, which is like right in the middle of Main Street. But like we wouldn't want to add that tax to like the residential areas in around 7. Because it really is for supporting the commercial areas. And the tax is 21 cents. These yellow areas here, that's the designated historic district. And so that means that, kind of briefly, that so the city had done a historic inventory of historic properties, and then the state historic preservation office reviews that to determine what areas of the district is considered historically contributing to the overall architecture of it. So all that to say that means that properties within these yellow areas here and 7 are eligible for historic tax credits. which is a federal incentive for renovating buildings. And also in Main Street, it's a locally designated district, which means that any property that's within those boundaries have additional steps if they're doing any updates to the exterior of their building. They either have to get staff approval from the planning department, depending on the level of project, or they've got to go through a process with the Historic Preservation Commission to get approval on anything that significantly changes. Or if there are new properties proposed, like new construction, they have to have some historic, the Historic Preservation Commission has to review it to make sure that it fits within the lines. An example of that was the parking garage. It's sitting on, but it had to go through the Historic Preservation Commission and that's when it's not just a plain concrete garage, we want aesthetics, right? Seventh does not have a local historic district, but that has been something that the Community Character Committee has been, and Economic Vitality, both committees and the Downtown Master Plan have been looking at, as far as what we can or should do as far as design guidelines for Seventh. And then going back on the taxes, so that that additional tax that those properties get, that's a process that's allowable by state statute, and it has to be, the funds have to go towards services above and beyond what places outside of the area. So they're paying that extra tax in order to receive that. And that is like the landscaping, the stuff that we do in our office as far as marketing and promotion, street signs, hanging baskets, things like that. So a little bit of background, as far as just kind of longer term. Back in 1975 was when the Main Street Municipal Service District was started. So that's when basically the building, the businesses and the properties kind of did a self-imposed tax because they were struggling back in the 70s. I went back and read old minutes from council meetings. And what they wanted to do was figure out ways to slow cars down and make it a really enjoyable experience downtown, because before 1977, which you were just talking about, Cheryl, it was what, like 5 lanes of cars. And so they had a mayor's committee that was developed. They actually flew out to Grand Junction, Colorado. And because Grand Junction has a curved street, Serpentine Street, like what we have today. And they decided that that's what they wanted to do. And so then they came back and drew it out and laid it out. So that's what it looked like. This is probably in the 90s. This is the only picture I really found of like a different era. And so they did that in the 70s. In 1998, the businesses and properties in 7th Avenue had decided to do that self-imposed tax because they wanted to have those funds go towards revitalizing 7th Avenue. And again, both of those were separate nonprofits back then. In 2006, the district, we added the block, the Allen Street block, because it was not curved. And so that added towards being able to make that a curved street. In 2008, that was when they had refurbished Main Street. It was about a 5-year process. And it kept the curved street, but it just updated the planters and it was a pretty extensive update that I was here. In 2011, it was brought under city management. There was a previous nonprofit called Downtown Hendersonville Incorporated, which was essentially disbanded, and it was brought in under the city. And then 2015, 7th Avenue, it had its own nonprofit, but it was, they didn't really have enough funds to do enough with as a nonprofit. And so then it was brought in under the city. So that way the funds that the tax generates can be leveraged against other city funds. And I'll go into that on the budget. In 2020, so 5 years ago, not long after I had started, the downtown department was separate, was its own individual department, but then it was brought in to be paired with planning and zoning to be the community development department. And that was not long after when the downtown board and the Main Street and Seventh Avenue board merged together. And then the last few years, we've had, the big thing was the construction of the parking garage and the development of the parking enterprise fund and meters. And also Seventh Avenue, which I don't have on here. Before then, the tax rates for 2022, the tax rates were different rates. And so now they're both the same equalized rates, which will really allows us to support both of them. We'll take a break real quick and get food. Yes. Some point for our little voice.
That's really interesting. I didn't realize that it was just like a 4 or 5 lane.
Yeah,
Like further down South Main Street where they just redid all the.
yeah,
Stuff.
Thank
It
you.
just was straight shot.
yeah, it was wide enough to turn a horse and buggy around. That was what the, 100 feet door to door is what it is. So there's plenty of room to add more to it. And yeah, feel free to get yourself a drink out of the refrigerator.
Right, so it was Scotty's Jewelry for a long time. So Scotty's rented from my uncle died.
I have crickets in my house.
Sold that building.
Like bugs? Yeah, cave crickets, have you seen them? They're
Scotty's had.
ugly, scary looking crickets, and they're in my house.
Place in your mouth first.
Looking.
In your house. I
I mean,
have those in my.
Oh, yeah, good, that's.
But now they're like, the house. We found 5 the other day.
we would like,
In the house.
we're.
That's creepy. Mine's staying down there.
It's down there and now they don't.
Less scary than undertaking the.
Yes.
And we have it all the way.
Huh?
You're talking about.
Oh, no, I'm on Lakeside, I'm done.
Thank you, we got something.
Overgrowth. Well, for my little research online, it says. They don't carry.
No, they're just creepy. They look like they jumped in the spider thing. You know, when I first moved into my house, there were thousands of, I thought, because I was crawling around down there. And I got a commercial grade dehumidifier. Over time.
Really?
So that worked. In order to have a dehumidifier that makes sense, you need to have like a moisture barrier.
I don't have, oh, yes.
Thank you.
That's good. Nicole is like all freaked out about crickets.
Top quality blurry.
Who's your respirator?
So it's a guy that does the shop. I'm gonna have him come out and take care of it.
I need a pest control.
Fine, it's touch and it's. I like them quite a lot.
What is the recording?
Oh, yeah. And everybody knows I have crickets.
Yeah.
All right, I wasn't muted.
I was.
I got food, drinks that you need. Long story short is that sales tax, the Main Street District receives 5% of the sales tax that the city collects or receives during the year, and then Seventh Avenue receives 1%. And that's proportional to the, it's just proportional to property tax revenue generated. Main Street also had received some money, permits, fees, and miscellaneous. So we have special event fees and sidewalk dining permits. And then, so how our staff, basically our staff is funded by the two districts of me and Terry and Dakota. And so basically about 68% of our salary is from the Main Street budget. And then, 10% comes from the general fund, so the city supports some of it, and then whatever that remaining percentage is, so that's, I'll get to the math. We also, this past year, have, we previously, all of our downtown landscaping was, contracted out, so we had a contracted landscaper, who's been doing it for years, and he retired, and so he actually just, his contract just finished yesterday, because it ran on a fiscal year. And so we've been preparing for that by bringing the landscaping in-house, which over time will offset what the cost of his contract was, because we also did not have any inclination that we'd be able to get a contractor, one, for what we were paying Bruce, who'd been doing it for years, or that like that we know will stick with us for this long. So we're kind of bringing it in-house to try to create some more sustainability in the landscaping. So we'll eventually have we currently have a three-person crew to do the downtown property services, but we get a lot of help from Public Works and overall. 7th Avenue, same tax rate, their property tax generates $54,650. And, sales tax, that 1% of sales tax revenue is about $72,000. And so then our staff kind of proportional to that. This just shows kind of in general what the, how the expenses are relative to their portion of the budget. So 7th Avenue, about 81% of that overall budget comes from personnel, and that's higher now because now we're bringing the plans in the house. And then about 20% is contracted services. We still pay for an arborist. We're still going to contract out the hanging baskets because we think that that's just more feasible to do that. And I think the guy who works with our landscaper will still do them. And then those are our main contracted services. And then Main Street is fairly similar as far as the proportion of everything, except for we do have debt service, which is $43,000 a year, and that's for this building. And so whenever the city wanted to have public restrooms downtown, they looked at a lot of different options for it and settled on purchasing this building and putting the public restrooms down on the first floor. And then they have the second floor, so that's on. And I think I want to say it's a 15-year debt on that, but I'm not entirely sure. So that will go away. It's 5 years, 6 years in now. So then going into the nonprofit, the Friends of Downtown. So you hear us just kind of say, the Friends covered lunch today. And so that's funds that we generate from events. So the city puts no money into the Friends. It's just basically self-generated. Where the city provides for the Friends is the Friends has no paid staff because it's us as city employees that operate the nonprofit. It's got a small board for just making sure that we're approving our 990s and approving any big financial decisions. And the board of the Friends is the chair and vice chair of the Downtown Advisory Board, and the city manager and the city finance director. So it's a very small board, but it really has more oversight from the downtown advisory board, like what we're talking about with facade grants and so. So, and like I said before, that kind of gives us some ability to have a little bit more flexibility with, like, we were talking this morning about benches. And if our budget's tight and we don't have the ability for the city to buy a new bench or something, then the Friends could kind of support that, and it's a little easier to do. This is go ahead.
Well, this is maybe too deep into the weeds, but we were talking about parades, and so let's say on a Christmas parade, which is not though this group, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm just curious, and this isn't, I'm not trying to be Ralph Nader or anything like that, but like knowing that there's set up for the street, then there's police and there's a lot of costs associated with putting on a parade. Are those costs absorbed by who's sponsoring the parade, or is it, there just some agreement that the city does that? I mean.
Yeah.
I'm interested in how that's shared.
That's a good question, and we did a big presentation to council back in January, February about the costs of events. And so we have, just for everybody's knowledge, so some of the events that we do, we still have to go to the city special events committee, which is representatives from our department, public works, police, fire, and they go through that committee goes through all the logistics of what's needed for the event. And they have to, every event has to pay, we have a level of fees where it still does not cover the cost, especially for parades. But there's some amount of fees, that we receive, the city receives for it. That is a big conversation that council has had, is like, we'll never be able to charge the fees.
Right.
That would pay for like the Apple Festival and the cost of city services.
I think the city services for Apple Festival was almost $200,000.
Yeah, yeah. For most events, other than the Apple Festival and the parades, the event organizers, which is us and other entities, Arts Council and different things, they do have to pay for off-duty police officers. And so, that's not accounted for in the city cost, but it's expenses that we have to pay for it. Did that answer your question?
It does, yeah. Thanks.
And this is really small and it's old, but this is, so the Friends, it's got its own separate accounting, but we've got the city's finance department help, so we have accountants that are making sure that we're following everything we need to do. We have a CPA to do the 990 for it every year. But it has a general farmers market, garden jubilee, rhythm and brews, barefoot, and then holiday events. And in this budget, it was in the negative as far as total income, but that was because we budget a certain amount to do like the facade grants every year. But typically it's budgeted cautiously, mostly because we've had some bad rhythm and brew seasons, and rhythm and brews can break even if it rains, but we don't make any money if it rains. Because we have enough sponsors for it to break even, but we don't have enough, like the beer sales is how we make like the gravy for it. So this is just kind of a cautious budget, but we've got about $140,000, I think, for the Friends. And like one thing that it's gonna do is install a lift in this building, because it doesn't have the ADA accessibility, and that's funds that the city didn't have, but the Friends have the ability to do that. And then like the facade grants, like if we wanted to do a public art project or something like that, the Friends could kind of help supplement that. This is kind of how that budget sort of how the resources are kind of dedicated and kind of same format as that previous one that had the arrows of how the committees work. But essentially, community character, economic vitality and events. There are some things that they do that are more related to city budget items, but a lot of things, because we have a little bit of flexibility with funding, we can have friends to cover. Events are solely funded by the Friends of Downtown, because the money comes in, money goes out of the nonprofit. And we receive funds from the TD, Tourism Development Authority, to help support some of those. We're doing their job, we're getting people to come and marketing for the community. And then economic vitality, so some of those funds, as far as from the Friends, are things like the facade grants. Things like we've got plans for this space to make it more of a co-working incubator type of space. So that's why the lift would be coming out of this. And then community character, that would, like, if we want to do extra projects like public art or something like that. Community character, bigger things like 7th Avenue streetscape. Friends aren't gonna pay for that. But where the Friends might come in, if the city doesn't have the funds for, would be like, if it was wanted to do designs for, like paper designs for the depot or something like that, if we pay for by that extra money that we've had from the Friends. And we've, there, Terry, who's not here, has done a really good job on sponsorship. And we just took over Garden Jubilee a couple of years ago. That used to be run by the CA, and so that one has become a big revenue generator for us. And then leading into what our different staff roles are. So what I do, so I oversee the whole program. I do some with events, but I try to leave it to Terry and Dakota to handle that. But anytime there's new business or property owners, I try to be that point of contact. Sometimes, and that's where the downtown board can be helpful, is there's not a really clear funnel that gets people to call me, because they don't necessarily, like, if there's no requirement for a business to register for anything, there's not a real clear way to get there. But then it creates problems later, because they might have tried to open without pulling correct permits or something like that, which happens more often than we like. And so as board members, if you hear people talking about, oh, they're interested in opening a business, or if they're interested in buying property or anything, shoot them over to me. That, because the more I can get people to send people my way, it's helpful. For downtown infrastructure projects, I'm kind of the liaison between some of our staff departments and the businesses and the properties, like for 7th Avenue, when the construction was going on there. I would send out the updates, businesses, when they're having problems, they could call me. So that way it's not tying up too much of the construction folks' time. And I can hopefully get things happening sometimes easier than others. And then just development of our work plan and managing our work plan. Terry is the event coordinator, and I kind of already mentioned this before, but she really oversees Garden Jubilee, Rhythm and Brews, the Barefoot and Art Walk and Auction, and holiday events. She works some with the farmers market, but really Dakota does that. We do the Halloween event we do in partnership with the County Parks and Rec. For Christmas, we do not do the parade. We do the tree lighting and old fashioned Christmas. For old fashioned, we really try to do, our holiday events are done to bring people to the businesses downtown, more merchant oriented. She also is kind of that point of contact for the special events. So the events that we do, but then events when there's like the people who are organizing the parade or the apple festival, they all have to submit applications that go through there. And then Dakota, except for his main job is farmer's market, because takes a lot throughout the season. But then the last couple of years, we've been, from the Friends, have been budgeting some funds towards having a summer intern that kind of helps on farmer's market stuff, in addition to other projects, to free up some of his time. Because a lot of it, what he does is help Terry with her event, and he does more of the marketing side of things, the social media newsletters. And then all of us do a lot with volunteers. We got a lot of them. And we've got just a volunteer sign up. And we probably have about 60 regular volunteers at the event, about over 100 throughout the year. And we do an end of the year party, and all the board members are invited. A few recent projects, I won't go into too much on that, to kind of hit on a lot of it. Parking garage, the opportunity fund. So we received money a few years ago from the Dogwood Health Trust to create a loan program with Mountain BizWorks. And part of that, we had regular lunches at Daddy D's, and they were open to try to just create an opening for people who were interested in opening businesses. A lot of it was just to get people to know that they can, like I said, find me and have a familiar face with like city stuff. So that way people can get it before they do put money into something that then they've done something, miss a step or something. And some of that has supported us having a few new vendors at some of our events that we've met through doing the networking. We haven't brought those back, and what eventually I'd like to do is bring it back into this space here, because we don't have the lunch option and we don't have the funding to pay for lunch in there anymore. But also what the intent of that program was to support some of the downtown businesses, if they have the opportunity to buy their building, to have access to loans to be able to do that. Because especially during COVID with businesses, they have a lot better chance of surviving if they own their property rather than renting. And it was changing property owners and everything, which there's not a lot of them that are property owners that are willing to sell. But our one success story has been Mike's on Main. They were able to buy their building through support from the loan program to be able to do that. And big loans. And so Mountain BizWorks works with the businesses or the business owners to be able to do that. The thing we did was our avenue signs on the corners. We updated that, which sounds like a small thing, but it almost took a while to do. I talked about events, and then ongoing is we do a map brochure every year, and we have our downtown website, an inventory of downtown properties and businesses that's on our website, and Stephanie's been helping me update that. Talk about that anymore. This is so we have a work plan, which is also printed off in there, and that's just trying to keep our focus on what we're working on. Sometimes it's easier than not to come up with new projects when our committees meet, rather than trying to complete the ones that we were working on. And so trying to, the work plan is meant to help us prioritize what we're working on, to try to, like, if people come up with new ideas, that's great, but we gotta get through first thing first. This is the last part about our volunteers and getting involved. So everybody on the board, not all of our board members are on subcommittees, but it's encouraged. So you're welcome to think about it, or let me know if there's one that kind of strikes your fancy to be involved with. We have some board members who come to all of them, and we have some that come to none of them. So it kind of just depends on your time and your availability. And then we don't have a lot of our board members who volunteer at events, and partially because a lot of them are downtown businesses, so they're working during the events. But it's always I feel like it's a good way to see kind of a different side of what we're doing. to come to like farmer's market or volunteer or Rhythm and Brews or Garden Jubilee. And if you don't know a lot of people in town, it's a great way to meet new friends.
And the shifts aren't bad and they're really fun.
Yeah.
Especially with the fruits.
Rhythm and Brews is super fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we've got a lot of volunteers who just do it every month. So yeah, just fun thing to do if you've got the availability for it. And that's presentation. Anybody have any? Yeah. Anybody got any questions, anything? Right?
I would be remiss if I didn't recruit for economic vitality. Subcommittee, so it's a good group.
Yeah, we've got, and the committees have people who aren't, it's people who are on the board and people outside who are just on the committees. So yeah, we've got that. So they all have their different projects. Sometimes it ebbs and flows, which one's got more going on, but both of those have been pretty big. And then, yeah, eventually getting that events committee kind of either shifted or having a second committee on that promotions side of things might be a direction to go. We just haven't quite gotten that worked out yet. Okay. Questions? Great job. Scare anybody off?
I hope we didn't scare anybody off. This board is a lot of fun.